And The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. Those are just some of the movies we're going to revisit on this week's show.
All the big Christmas movies are in theaters right now, and on this special show, we're going to review our reviews. Some of the movies we liked, some we didn't, and on some we didn't agree.
Boromir died to save us, my kinsman and me. He fell defending us from many foes.
Hit him.
I offer you my service, such as it is, in payment of this debt.
The dominant character in Part 3 is Gandalf, played by Ian McKellen, who is more all-knowing and authoritative than ever before. If I have a problem with Gandalf in this movie, it's with his extraordinary physical agility. He looks like a very old man with that beard down to his waist, and yet he rides for days, leads troops into battle, and in one special effects long shot is outrunning all of the younger warriors in a headlong charge. Moments like that tend to undermine the credibility of the character, but then I guess realism is not exactly the strong point of this series. And you know, the nice thing about this film is the series did not run out of gas. In a way, I think it kind of goes like this: Part 2 and then Part 3 back up here again. And now, having seen the whole sweep of the three films, I admire it more as a whole than I did any of the parts. And the one thing that I really liked about Part 3 is that the hobbits are back in the thick of the action. I felt in Part 2, they were always kind of on hold. They were off somewhere doing something else, and here the hobbits get their due.
And you're so right about the characters. I mean, it's almost more interesting to see the sort of Greek tragedy kind of stuff that's going on, because the one thing I don't think you have here is a villain to match up with all these great warriors and hobbits and everything. It's just sort of this dark lord and then this sense of evil, because you have all these creatures.
I also love the big kind of elephant creatures who are brought down. You know, all in all, as you think back over what Peter Jackson has done here in these three films, it is really a landmark.
They're ghosts, Dad.
They're not ghosts. We're just having hallucinations from that dinner that we ate. It was that chicken. It didn't taste right.
Hey!
Who?
It's not the chicken.
All right, it's not the chicken.
Jennifer Tilly specializes in playing airheads, but in the Haunted Mansion, she's a disembodied head that dishes out clues to the family as they try to break the curse of that haunted mansion. Why is she in that crystal ball? Where's the rest of her? For that matter, what's with the barbershop quartet hanging out in the graveyard? Maybe these weird elements are designed to stretch the paper-thin plot, which involves the ghostly lord of the manor and his desperate attempt to reconnect with his former lover, who is a dead ringer for Murphy's wife. Who knows why? Also, who cares?
Well, I'm not recommending this movie, but I think I must have a lot more affection for it than you do, and one of the things I wouldn't do is question its logic, because this is not the kind of movie where you ask those kinds of questions. And as for the
of course it is.
barbershop quartet in the graveyard, I loved them. The four statues that sang close harmony, I thought that was very cute.
Well, it's cute to you. It's
fun.
Just dopey to me.
And I thought that in its own way, it doesn't quite work, but that it's not a stinker. A lot of people probably enjoy this movie.
It's dreadful. You are being far too kind to this.
It's not dreadful.
And Eddie Murphy, I don't know what happened. I thought he was going to be the kind of actor who at this point in his career would be doing serious dramatic work as well as really clever, smart comedies, and he's just in one dumb movie after another.
I know a brother who laid his hand on the child one time. One time. That child cramped up, fell down, and spit up white beans till she died.
You stop this. You hear me? You're scaring her.
She needs to be scared, and so do you.
The centerpiece of this film is an elongated chase sequence with Maggie and her father trying to find the kidnappers, even though they realize that catching up with them will likely result in death for the entire family. Director Howard has a keen sense of tension and pacing, though I felt he did lose some momentum in the elongated third act. Still, this is a uniquely dark Western. You know, since the silent era, there have been thousands of action Westerns with hundreds of menacing villains, but they're usually men in black striding down Main Street at high noon. The monster in the missing lives in the shadows and creeps into your dreams in the dead of night. Thumbs up.
You know, this movie didn't work for me, and it's obviously kind of an update, politically correct, of The Searchers. With the John Wayne character now turned into a guy who studies the Indians and who understands the Indians and who loves the Indians. Then you have to get the Indians off the hook. So the kidnappers are actually renegades who are going to take these girls and sell them as prostitutes in Mexico, in which case, doesn't it seem odd to you that they never had sex with them themselves?
No, because they address that in the film at one point, and they say if you do that, they'll be less valuable in Mexico. So that small element doesn't bother me at all.
I think maybe that was put in later in a story conference to deal with the fact that these Indians cannot act as they probably would have in that time and place.
I think that's a minor point. I mean, I understand what you're saying about the movie. There's a lot going on here, maybe too much. And as I said, I wish they had compressed it a little bit. But I just think, you know, the opening half hour is so filled with real tension, and it's very frightening.
Fabulous. If the whole movie had been about Kate Blanchett as a frontier doctor raising her 2 daughters, that could have been a good movie. But then we get into the chase and the hiding behind rocks and shooting at each other and tracking each other and getting captured and turning yourself in and getting out again.
But how about some of that mystic stuff? Didn't you find that guy pretty menacing? Wasn't he scary?
Mystic stuff is kind of a bore to me. You know,
no,
I thought it was point where it's like a story device.
I thought it was a real interesting hybrid.
Put your sweater on, sweetie.
He's inside, dear.
Let's start. So, is Jake your only child?
No. We have 12.
I couldn't keep her off me.
Cheaper by the Dozen aims a lot of its gags at the adolescent crowd. We get escaped frogs causing chaos and chandeliers crashing and dogs knocking people over. But it also has some sharp one-liners and a strong family heart, so thumbs up.
When I was a kid, I was an only child, and for some reason I read the novel Cheaper by the Dozen about 100 times because I wanted to have 11 brothers and sisters, I think. The original father, whose name was Gilbreth, was a time and motion expert, and he tried to run his family the way he would run a factory. Everybody had a job and a timetable and a schedule and a checklist and everything like that. And I think that also would have been a funny way to approach the story because I can see Steve Martin as that character instead of this character who has no idea about time, motion, or anything else.
No, he just brings the football team in to help things out, which really doesn't work too well. But this movie also does have Ashton Kutcher kind of poking fun at himself as Piper Peraboo's boyfriend, and that's some pretty funny stuff as well.
Okay, coming up next, Nicole Kidman and Jude Law in Cold Mountain.
Now in theaters. Brought to you by Orville Redenbacher. Start popping today.
I'm not smiling in it. I don't know how to do that. Hold the smile.
Ida.
What?
The structural problem with Cold Mountain is that Ada and Inman scarcely have a relationship at all before they're separated for most of the movie. The real relationship is between Ada and Ruby, the no-nonsense farm helper. Renee Zellweger is sassy but competent, and Nicole Kidman's character begins to change. It's as if Scarlett O'Hara finally encounters real life. The war is more of a backdrop to these stories, but there is one scene of incredible horror as Union troops blow up the Southern lines and then are trapped in the hell of their own pit dug by their own bombs. Thumbs up.
Thumbs up for me as well, but this is a good movie, not a great one. It's wildly uneven, and you touched on that a little bit because you have that one scene that's something like Saving Private Ryan. It's that intense, and then you have sort of these whimsical adventures of Jude Law, who is, after all, a deserter, and I think that's a problem as well. You know, we're trying to sympathize with this guy who was basically run out on the war. And, the Renee Zellweger character, I think, is something out of a 1950s movies in a way. Like, she's kind of stomping about, like, give me my Oscar, look at me, I'm colorful, and I'm crazy, and I'm, so kind of an Annie Oakley type.
You're right about that, but I like Renee Zellweger. I like her spirit and her spunk. And, you know, in the novel, this is a biracial character. Although, on the other hand, I think during the Civil War, you weren't exactly biracial. You were either black or white. And I think that, in a way, she's trying to play that character, even though she isn't that character. And that is a bit of a problem, but yet her spirit and the style that she brings are fun.
Well, it's fun. I think it's out of a different movie. There's so many different elements going on here. Some work a lot better than others. As I said, a good film, but in a way, a little bit of a disappointment. As much as I admire Tom Cruise, this role is a bit of a reach for him. Kevin Costner had that Gary Cooper timelessness, but Cruise is very much an actor of his time. His look, voice, and technique are ultra-modern, which is why he's so strong in movies like the futuristic Minority Report. But I didn't buy Cruise in the period epic Far and Away, and I wasn't completely sold on him here. When he puts on that samurai warrior's garb, I did see Tom Cruise in a costume. I don't think it's a weak performance, but it doesn't compare, I don't think, to Russell Crowe's work in Master and Commander. Still, for the movie, a solid thumbs up.
You know, this is always a problem with a movie star. And Tom Cruise is the biggest movie star we have.
Yeah.
And I give him lots of points for going for this project and for trying to do it. And I think that actually, maybe after 5 minutes, I forgot that it was Tom Cruise, and I kind of accepted that he was this soldier. And I believed it. I mean, he's a good actor. With it. I mean, he is Tom Cruise. He's not going to ever be able to stop being Tom Cruise.
No, of course not. And obviously, any movie we see with a big star, Halle Berry and Gothica, we have to, suspend disbelief. I'm just saying there were a few moments here where I thought I didn't quite buy him as an authentic member of this cast, and everybody else did seem of their time.
That's a valid feeling that I didn't really share, but I mean, this movie, when we talk about production design, sometimes it just means that something is pretty or it's amazing, or in the case of The Cat in the Hat, it's way overdone. Here, this world and the people in it, and Ken Watanabe as the Last Samurai,
all of
are just really well done.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the best looking movies of the year.
Okay,
coming up next, Matt Damon and Greg Kinnear in Stuck on You.
What's it like at the North Pole?
Like the suburbs. Now get off my lap.
You are really Santa, right?
No, I'm an accountant. I wear this thing as a fashion statement, all right?
Okay.
Marcus, get this kid out of here. He's freaking me out.
Bad Santa does not compromise. It's about a wretched loser who was wretched almost all the way. Only in this movie would the happy ending be considered happy. It's more like a train wreck where a few cars don't derail. But Tony Cox thinks positive, and Lauren Graham is the bartender who's turned on by making love with Santa. Bad Santa is not for everyone. It may be for hardly anyone, but you've never seen anything like it, and in its own way, it is brave, radical, uncompromising, and you know what? It's even funny.
It's very funny. I'm right with you every step of the way here. It's sick and twisted and depraved, and I admire all of that. And the character of the bartender, who's a drunk herself, and she has a catchphrase that she utters when she's with Santa that I can't repeat, but I was laughing out loud at that. I laughed out loud at a lot of this stuff. And it never does pull back and say, okay, we're really just going to give you a sweet message. I mean, that kid is maybe weirder than the Billy Bob Thornton character, but I like that too. I like the stuff with Bernie Mac and the late John Ritter in his last role. He and Billy Bob Thornton were friends, and he's got a nice little touch, little role as the store manager, trying to figure out how he can get rid of this guy, but they can't figure out a way to get rid of him. So it's very funny. I would say don't see it with somebody you don't know very well.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
You might be in an embarrassing situation.
Tony Cox as Marcus is interesting too, because he's not playing comic relief.
No.
He's mad at Santa all the time. He's at it with this guy who has been standing him up and getting drunk and messing up the robberies, and he doesn't want to work with him anymore. And everybody in this movie is mad at each other. And they don't. It doesn't end with all sweetness and light.
No, but every time you cringe,
weird happy ending.
Yeah, but every time you cringe, they give you something to cringe even more. And I kept thinking, I'd love to see Will Ferrell's Elf cross paths with these guys. They would wipe the floor with him in 15 seconds.
Bad Santa meets the elf.
You're a fake. I'm a fake? Yes. How'd you like to be dead? Huh? No, he's kidding.
You stink.
I think you're gonna have a good Christmas, all right?
You smell like beef and cheese. You don't smell like Santa.
Okay.
James Caan plays the rich businessman who, to his amazement, has fathered this gigantic elf. Elf was directed by Jon Favreau, who also directed the underrated 2001 comedy named Maid, and here he takes what could have been dreadfully cutesy material and makes it sparkle and surprises. Will Ferrell is lovable, that's really the only word for it, as the relentlessly cheerful buddy who spreads good cheer even in the face of humbugs like James Caan. Mary Steenburgen is sweet as Caan's wife, who's delighted to discover her husband has a son he didn't know about, even if the son is an elf. I walked into this movie with big doubts and found myself grinning a whole lot of the time.
Yeah, it is. There are a lot of grins. It's not a laugh-out-loud comedy, but Favreau is a director and a writer who loves movies. He's sort of like Tarantino with the guns put away. I mean, he likes dialogue and he likes different styles. The stuff at the North Pole is kind of fun because it reminded me of those 60s specials on Frosty the Snowman and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. There's even a nod to Burl Ives as Frosty, as the narrator of Frosty. So I liked all of that. The stuff in New York, I think it's hit and miss, but there's a lot more hits and laughs, so it's worth recommending. There's a few moments where it kind of drags, and James Caan's a very strange choice for a movie like this.
He's a good choice.
But in a way, that's kind of wacky, too.
And you know, Will Ferrell, it takes a certain amount of nerve to be that goofy.
Oh, well, we already know.
He's just out there, you know, on the edge with this performance, and it goes all the way it works.
So one thing we know is that Will Ferrell will take any chance possible to get a laugh in a movie, and it works well here.
Does indeed.
Right now, I'm just kind of a lingerie model.
Oh, my God, so am I.
No, he isn't. You guys are gonna love it here at the Star. I've been here like 2.5 years, and hey, you guys are stuck together.
The Farrellys have this way of challenging our sensibilities, but then they'll sneak up on us by injecting the story with authentic heart and humanity. We laugh and we cringe and we shake our heads in disbelief, but we also find ourselves rooting for these underdogs who are usually smarter and better equipped to handle life than the so-called normal people around them. Stuck on You is hilarious, but it's also sweet in a demented sort of way. Thumbs up for me.
I liked it too, and you know, the Farrellys do have a sensibility here that says these people are different, but that doesn't make them weird and strange and hateful, and we can deal with them, and we can know them, and we can get to like them, and we can love them. And there's a character in the movie named Rocket who plays a waiter in that restaurant in their hometown.
Quickie Burger.
And I believe that Rocket is actually a friend of the Farrelly brothers, and that he is more or less playing himself. And their regard for him and their affection for him is emblematic of the entire movie, so that this is a funny film, but at the same time, in its own strange way, it's a very positive film for people who are handicapped.
They're not really asking us to laugh at the fact that these guys are stuck together, which of course is a funny thing. It's the way people react to them, and also the dynamic here. I mean, the performances. Think about Greg Kinnear and Matt Damon, who probably for hours each day we're stuck to each other. And each of them create these fully realized characters. They're very funny.
All kinds of great situations. They manage to date a girl who doesn't know that they're conjoined twins. He manages to be on television with his twin kind of invisible on the soap opera.
And Cher has a lot of fun poking fun at her own image.
Yes,
in
Cher
this movie.
So it's a lot of fun. Okay, coming up next, Jack Nicholson and Diane Keaton and Something's Gotta Give.
Visit our website at ebertandroeper.tv or at movies.com.
You look beautiful.
Thank you.
Something's Gotta Give is written and directed by Nancy Meyers, whose past credits include hits such as What Women Want and The Father of the Bride movies. I like the quieter, dialogue-driven scenes between Harry and Erica a lot more than the physical farce. Still, I'm giving thumbs up to this rare age-balanced romance, eventually age-balanced, with top work from two fantastic veteran stars.
I liked it too, and what I really liked, and you mentioned this, was the conversations between the two of them, because what they're dealing with are the issues involved. It's not just all plot points, which you get in a stupid movie, but she's talking about how she kind of thought that maybe it was all over for her in the love department, and he defends the fact that he dates younger women, and she analyzes him, and he talks about what the matter with her is, and they're really dealing with this, and they don't realize at the same time they're getting hooked on each other.
They're very smart people, and you know, just the two of them walking along the beach having a conversation is thrilling cinema in its own way.
But you know, one thing that I did think was a stretch for Nicholson is a couple of scenes where he cries. And that's something you don't see Jack Nicholson doing in the movies, where he's really touched. And I was kind of...
You were kind of taken out of it?
I thought it worked.
I did too. I did as well.
Don't disrespect this class just because you're married. Don't disrespect me just because you're not. Come to
Mona Lisa Smiles shows a campus where there are still classes in deportment, poise, and how to be a perfect hostess. There's that class in setting the table. Don't think they teach that at Wellesley anymore. The Roberts character is a bohemian from Berkeley who exposes her girls to artists like Jackson Pollock, and then is instructed by the college never to make that mistake again. One thing I really liked about the movie is that it really is about a school year, about a teacher and her students, and about the social changes that are coming. It's focused. It doesn't have a lot of phony melodrama. And Julia Roberts doesn't make her character a shrill radical, but simply a woman who thinks for herself. Thumbs up.
Thumbs up for me as well. You know, I know a lot of people have said, oh, this thing looks a lot like Dead Poets Society. Well, so what? You know, we've seen, 700 movies about a cop on the edge who turns in his badge and gets the bad guy. So, okay, once in a while you can have a movie that follows a certain pattern. It does have a lot of the same elements. I like the supporting performances, maybe even better. And Julia Roberts is very good, but I mean, it's a role I think she can do pretty effortless. But Maggie Gyllenhaal, I think, of all the supporting roles, maybe has the best character and the best role to play.
It's a movie about what women were like when I was growing up. This is the world my mother inhabited. They didn't have jobs, and they just kind of supported their husband.
I'd say the one place where I thought the film failed was the depictions of men. I mean, every guy in here is just a stereotype and doesn't have very many surprising things about him.
I think in 1953, a lot of guys were stereotypes, according to us today.
Maybe so.
I think so.
Next week on Ebert and Roeper, the best movies of the year. Ebert and Roeper count down their picks for the top 10 movies. Ebert and Roeper's best movies of the year, next week. Join Ebert and Roeper's 4th annual Film Festival at Sea. Preview the hottest new movies and enjoy lively discussions with the critics. Roger and Richard sail to the Bahamas and Disney's Castaway Cay on March 11th through the 14th aboard the Disney Wonder. Ebert and Roeper's Film Festival at Sea. Call your travel agent or 1-800-945-3806.
That's it for this special show. Remember, you can hear all our recent reviews at ebertandroeper.tv or at movies.com and read us in print at suntimes.com. Until next week, the balcony is closed.
You know, I was had no idea what to expect, and it was one of the great movie-going experiences I've ever had. That's one of the great things about this time of year. There's so much buzz about all these big movies, and then something like this comes along, and yeah, it's devastating.
Now you can make real, authentic Mexican meals at home. Easy as uno, dos, tres, with new Pace Mexican Creations cooking sauces.